Welcome into Texans Today, everybody. I'm your host, Jeremy Chuggs, and coming up on today's show, I'm grading every single pick the Houston Texans made in the 2025 NFL Draft. You might say, Jeremy, you're an easy grader. I don't give any Ds. I don't give any Fs because all these young men still have something to prove. And at the very least, any of these guys can turn into a major factor for this Texans squad. Now, before I get into it, if you want free Texans draft content, hell, if you want free Texans content all year long, the latest news and rumors, hit that subscribe button, turn on those notifications for the latest around your Houston Texans 365 days a year. Now, let's get into the grades, baby. Let's get into it. First up, Jayden Higgins at pick 34 in round 2. I'm going to give this one an A-. I think this was a fantastic pick by the Houston Texans. I really like what he brings to the table and how he can fit in this Texans offense. It would have been an A+, but it hurts me that the Texans didn't go O-line first. Now, they made it up for it a little bit with the next pick, but I really do like Jayden Higgins at the end of the day, and I think him alongside with Nico Collins and his teammate, who we'll talk about in a little bit, it's going to be a really good receiving core for CJ this year. Only 3 drops over the last 2 seasons. I mean, the catch radius is insane, and you see the numbers right there, right? Almost 1,200 yards, 9 touchdowns this past year for the Cyclones. Jayden Higgins is a problem. I really like his game, like I said, and that's why I gave it an A- grade for the Houston Texans for this pick. I really think Jayden Higgins is going to have an impact in his rookie season for the Houston Texans. Good pick there by Nick Caserio, and plus they traded back in the draft to get him, so they acquired more picks down the road. Now, let's go into the next pick. Round 2, pick 48. I'm going to give Aireontae Ersery a B+. Look, this is the high upside guy, and there are certain draft pundits out there. I know Todd McShay said it. In 3 years, we could look down the road, and Aireontae Ersery could become the best tackle from this draft class. I mean, a great starter at Minnesota, a captain at Minnesota, 6'6", 331 pounds, 12 games played, a 77.5 PFF overall grade, and only 1 sack allowed this past year for the Golden Gophers. This is what Dane Brugler had to say on Ersery. Ersery has the size, strength, and movement talent to become an NFL starting tackle. His timing, angles, and overall consistency continue to improve with pro coaching. It might be a bumpy ride early as he transitions to the next level. So maybe they want to, start him out at left guard next to Cam Robinson, learn a little bit, and then the plan is eventually move him to left tackle. That's my only concern, though. I don't know how good of a guard he's going to be year 1 as a rookie, or, the grade might maybe goes down a little bit if he doesn't start. If you have him as the backup left tackle and he's just, the guy in waiting, the grade might go down a little bit. But if he starts, if he's your starting left tackle for the foreseeable future and he's really good, the grade could go up just a little bit as well. Aireontae Ersery, a lot of boom or bust potential, but I really like the pick by Nick Caserio in this front office. Now, before we get into the next pick, I want to know, what do you think was the best pick the Texans made in this draft? The very best pick where you were like, that was a home run, knock out of the park pick. Let me know down in the comments section. That's going to be the pinned comment on today's video. So if you get hit with the YouTube ad break, all good. Scroll on down and give me your answer of who you think was the very best pick by the Houston Texans in this draft. I'm going to go with this guy. Jaylen Noel from Iowa State, A+ grade. I thought he was going to go in the second round for sure. A lot of guys went before him. Hell, I would have been okay if the Texans picked Noel at 34. He's that good. And the fact that you're pairing him with his teammate in Higgins, I mean, it's just icing on top of the cake, right? Almost had 1,200 yards, the same as his teammate Higgins. 8 touchdowns this past year, along as 75. I mean, he's a little bit undersized, but he has that speed and sure-handed ability. Our draft expert, Tom Downey, has him at 58 overall, the 7th best wide receiver. I disagree that he doesn't offer a lot in the yak ability. I think he can offer a ton in that aspect. I mean, look at the average yards per catch, 14.9. 8 touchdowns this past year for Noel. I really like him and his fit in this offense. And like I said, I wouldn't have been mad if he was the second round pick for the Houston Texans. This is what the Athletics' Dane Brugler had to say. Noel is a smaller target, but very quarterback-friendly because of the confidence he has in his hands and his athletic versatility, which makes him tough to cover. His scouting report and college tape give flashbacks to those of Christian Kirk when he was a draft prospect, and the Texans traded for Christian Kirk this year. So if we have two good Christian Kirks, I'm okay with that. I think he's a really good receiver, and I think, Jaylen Noel can be somebody who ends up being the best pick for the Texans when we look back at this draft class in a couple of seasons. Now, let's go into round 3. Jaylen Smith, cornerback from USC. I'm going to give this one a C+. There was a couple picks in this draft where I was a little, questioning it. I didn't know what the idea or what the plan was, just because I thought you could have gotten Jaylen Smith a little bit further down, right? He's a good player, and maybe not. Maybe it had something to do with Kalen Bullock being at his draft party, but you never know. These were his numbers the past year: 59 tackles, 4 tackles for loss, 4 pass breakups, 2 interceptions. Not bad numbers by any standard, and I don't think he's a bad player, even though our draft expert Tom Downey said he was the 268th best player in this draft class, number 31 overall for cornerbacks. I think this has a couple things, right? Kalen Bullock, a former teammate of Jaylen Smith, probably was like, hey, please get my guy. I really, really trust him. 2, he kind of has that same mentality. He has that, ability to really bring the hammer and really lay it down. So I really think that's part of it, where he has that swarm mentality that DeMeco really likes. He's not afraid to hit anybody, so that might have bumped him up a little bit on the draft boards. Now, we're going to get into all the rest of the picks the Texans made in this draft class, but before I get into all of these guys, got to talk about our sponsor on today's show. Big shout out to our friends over at Game Time, the official ticketing partner of Texans Today and Chat Sports. I love Game Time, and you will too. It's the easiest place to get last-second tickets on whatever you're trying to go to. You can save up to 60% on buying, sporting event tickets, concerts, comedy shows, theater, and more. I use Game Time all the time. It is the perfect date night hack if you're trying to say, hey, what's going on in my area? Check out Game Time, and you can see what's going on whatever weekend. Or if you're visiting a city, you can just change the city in the app and see what's going to happen the time that you're going to that city. I love Game Time because I like creating lasting memories, and that's exactly what Game Time does for you. They help you create lasting memories by going to amazing events like sports, concerts, comedy shows, and more. And for our viewers, our amazing viewers, we have an amazing code for you. Use that code CHATSPORTS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Once again, use that code CHATSPORTS, CHATSPORTS, for $20 off your first purchase. And you see right here, Warriors-Rockets Game 5. Be there, be loud at Toyota Center. I'm literally watching Game 3 as we speak. Rockets, I'm hoping they get the dub tonight. Bring it back home to Houston for this loud and raucous crowd. If you want to be there, if you want to cheer on our Rockets, make sure you're using the Game Time app to go get those tickets. One more time, use that code CHATSPORTS for $20 off your first purchase. What time is it? It is game time. Now, we're going to go to the next player on my grades video, Woody Marks, running back from USC. I'm going to give this one a B, and I saw a lot of people were very, very critical of this pick. They didn't like it because of his 40-yard dash and his 40-yard dash simply. I disagree. I think Woody Marks is an excellent player. I actually have a cousin who went to USC, and he said, these are the notes he told me, really, really good receiver. Good initial burst, not a guy who's going to move the pile, but he's patient, has great footwork, and is a great scat/third down back. Last time I checked, that's exactly what the Texans need. They need a receiving back, a guy who can catch the ball out of the backfield, and I know everybody's going to look at the testing numbers for him. He 4.5 40-yard dash. You know who else had a 4.5 40-yard dash, 4.6 40-yard dash, and everybody thought he was going to be a bust? Kamari Laster. And how did he end up for the Houston Texans? I'm not saying everybody who doesn't test well is going to end up being really good, but at the same time, we can't judge a guy off the underwear Olympics where he ran a 4.5, which isn't isn't like he's a dinosaur. Isn't like he's super slow. The dude still has some burst. And like I said, he's a former track athlete and he has long speed. So in short area, burst like that in the 40-yard dash, maybe that's not his, best area of his game, but I still do think Woody Marks is going to fit nicely next to Joe Mixon. They wanted a complementary piece. They didn't want, they were looking for something very specific, a receiving back. And I know a lot of people wanted Brashard Smith. I thought that would be the pick for the Houston Texans, but I am perfectly okay with Woody Marks. Let's go to their next pick at pick 187. Jaylen Reed, defensive back from Penn State. I'm going to give this one a B+, and simply because I think the Texans needed more secondary help, and they got it in a couple different ways in this draft. They went Jaylin Smith. They went Jaylen Reed. I mean, they went every single Jaylen, right? Jaylen, Noel, Jaylen Smith, Jaylen Reed. But our guys at the NFL Combine were able to talk to Jaylen Reed, and even back then, he badly wanted to be a Houston Texan. He talked about this Texans defense. He talked about his mentality and how he thinks it would fit perfectly in Houston with DeMeco Ryans. He has a fast, aggressive player. That's going to be a common theme with a lot of these guys that the Texans took this year. Fast, aggressive, because they want that swarm mentality, right? Special work ethic and relentless mindset. And I think Jaylen Reed has that. 98 tackles this past year for Penn State, 7 tackles for loss, 6 PBUs, 3 interceptions. I think this might be one of the steals of this draft. I think he's a really good player, and that's why I gave him a B+ grade. I think he can really turn out to be something. I like Jaylen Reed, and especially where they got him, round 6, 187. I was surprised that he fell that far down the draft, but you take value when it hits you in the face in the draft. And I think that's exactly what Nick Caserio did. Can't say as much for this next pick. Graham Mertz, I'm going to give it a C, and this has nothing to do with Graham Mertz, the player, even though I don't think he's, one of the best quarterbacks from this draft, maybe a, developmental piece, but, maybe a Davis Mills replacement? I don't know. Davis Mills on a 1-year contract. Maybe they're looking to move him. Maybe they're looking to trade him at some point. I just don't see it, right? Like, Graham Mertz is a guy who I think could have easily gone undrafted as well. Could have easily gone undrafted. The Texans get him in round 6, and I just think there were some other guys on the board that maybe could have helped at another position of need. And obviously, quarterback is not a position of need for the Houston Texans. We have C.J. Stroud. So I think it's perfectly, fine that they went with him. I think it's okay, but I can't give it anything more than a C because it's not going to be an impactful starter for you. It's not going to move the needle for the Houston Texans drafting a guy like Graham Mertz. Let's go to the next pick the Texans made in round 7, 224. Kyonte Hamilton. I'm going to give this one a C+, and I was teetering on C+, B-, and to be completely frank, I need to do a little bit more study on Kyonte Hamilton. A stout guy in the middle from what I've seen in the little bit that I kind of studied on him. Tom Downey had him as the 38th ranked defensive tackles, 36 tackles, 5 tackles for loss, 4 sacks, 1 forced fumble this past year for Rutgers. Could possibly come in and help in this defensive tackle room, maybe be a nose tackle. But like I said, I need to do a little bit more homework on Kyonte Hamilton, but a C+, it's a 7th round pick, right? Like, how many times do 7th round picks even make the team? Like, our guys that we drafted last year did not make the team, the 7th round picks. So Kyonte Hamilton could easily be a rotational defensive tackle, and he could easily not make the team as well. Need to do some more research, but he's definitely got a lot to prove as a 7th round pick. And I could say the same thing about Luke Lachey, but I gave it a little bit of a higher grade just because I think the value was really good here. I mean, an Iowa tight end, and yes, he didn't have a ton of production at Iowa, but I still think you're at the very end of the draft. Why not go ahead and get a guy who I think has some pretty decent upside? You have a former tight ends coach in Nick Caley as your OC. He didn't have good production at Iowa, but the entire Iowa offense kind of sucked. And you add somebody who is a really good blocker, somebody who's going to come in and give you high-level effort, high level of intensity at the tight end spot. And, that's kind of the one spot where the tight end room was lacking. What happened at the end of that playoff game against the Chiefs? Dalton Schultz missed the block. And, the other tight ends that we had, Irv Smith and Cade Stover, They weren't, world beaters at tight end either in the blocking department. You have a lot of receiving guys at tight end in a Dalton Schultz, in a Cade Stover, in a Brevin Jordan. Why not add a guy in Luke Lachey that is more of a blocking style tight end that can really help you bring something else to this tight end room? Now, I want you to go in the comment section, grade the Texans draft class this year. Let me know down in the comment section your grade for the Houston Texans in this year. I'm going to go with a B. Solid B. I don't think it was an A plus. I think they got really good value at certain spots, and that's what you need in the draft. This Texans roster was already amazing. You just needed to fill in spots here and there. I would have given it an A, but they didn't double dip at offensive line. So that makes me think that they feel really confident in guys like a Laken Tomlinson, Juice Scruggs or Jarrett Patterson, and Titus Howard playing on the inside. Blake Fisher, they maybe feel comfortable with him or Titus Howard on the right tackle, and they obviously feel somewhat comfortable with Cam Robinson. Maybe I just don't see it, but I don't think the offensive line is nearly where it needs to be for this next year. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe coaching changes, Cole Popovich, a couple different guys in there can really change things up on this offensive line, but for right now, it's looking like the O-line might be worse than this past year, which kind of scares me. So I couldn't give it anything more than a B. I thought they got some good players. I like Ersery. I like the two receivers out of Iowa State. But it makes me wonder, do the Texans need to do more in the trade market or in free agency?